I miss you, NBA.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, another team preview podcast for you today. We're going to be looking at the very changed Boston Celtics. So Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. To talk about the Celtics, I've brought in one of the co-hosts of the Locked On Celtics podcast. John Karalis is back with us. John, welcome back to the show.
It's my pleasure.
Good to have you here to talk about a Celtics team which looks a little bit different to what it has in the past. I'm generally starting these shows off, John, by just covering off some injury news, anything we need to get caught up on. In the Celtics, the only real injury update we need from you is Romeo Langford, who we didn't see in Summer League, had that thumb injury, which did potentially impact his shooting last year in college. Is he going to be ready to go for training camp?
He's ready to go right now, so yes.
All right, so let's start talking a bit about Langford, the first round pick of the Celtics, pick number 14. I don't believe that he is going to be an every night rotation player this season. Do you share those views?
I agree. I think he's going to be a bench guy, and how much of a bench guy is really the question. They're working a lot with him on fixing his shot. The focus for them is getting his thumb off the ball on his guide hand. So I've actually seen them tape a ping pong paddle to his left hand so he can shoot and keep that hand straight. And that's been their primary focus. So if he can get that set and he can start hitting a shot, a long range shot with a little bit more consistency, then he'll start to get some more minutes probably. But until that gets figured out, and until I would assume they can see it in game, probably at the G League level, in game consistently, they probably won't use him at the NBA level.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Langford being any sort of meaningful contributor this season, but one guy who will be a meaningful contributor, John, of course, is Kemba Walker, who comes across as the big free agent signing, coming in to replace Kyrie Irving. Kemba had an excellent season last season for Charlotte, obviously made that All-NBA team, All-NBA third team. Kemba put up some pretty big fantasy numbers last season. I'm a little bit hesitant with him. Some people are really big on him for this season. He was the 20th ranked player last season. People are thinking he's going to take a step up, but I just don't see, John, you can offer an alternate opinion here, how he's going to maintain a 32% usage, which he had for the Hornets last year, where he averaged almost 26 points a game.
Yeah, he's going to be, I don't think that usage is going to stay up there at all either. He's definitely going to be distributing the ball a little bit more. He's not going to need to do as much as he did in Charlotte. At the same time, Kemba Walker is Kemba Walker,
yeah.
So he's going to go do his thing. So is he going to go put up 25 points? Maybe not, but I can still see him getting more than 20. So he'll still do what he needs to do. My biggest thing is I'm hoping that he gets to the free throw line a little bit more. So even if he's not taking as many jump shots or he's not getting as many field goal attempts, that he can pump that up with some more free throws. And considering that he's going to have guys on his team that can score the ball and are threats and can space the floor a little bit, that he might get the opportunity to get into the paint a little bit more, which he does a lot anyway, and get some more free throws. So I still think he's going to be up there, but maybe you're right. Maybe not quite as high a usage and as big accounting stats as he was this past season in Charlotte.
He is too highly ranked to me on Yahoo over at number 16 there, which again is expecting him to get better than what he was last season. I think that's just going to be a tough ask with the other players around and not having that 32% usage. Yes, efficiency might increase. I think assist numbers will increase a little bit for Kemba as well. And if the free throw attempt rate does increase, that's huge, given he's an 85% free throw shooter. I just don't see him being that middle of the second round guy. To me, he's a back end second round, early third round sort of a player who's probably going to drop from 26 down to 25 22, 23 points per game would be my guess. But as you said, he is still Kemba Walker. He is still really good. He's going to get what he gets. He's just not going to have to carry that such a large load that he did in Charlotte last season, which could only be good for the overall team and for his health, but just in terms of those overall raw counting stat numbers, I just don't see how that's going to happen. Jason Tatum, it's his third season now in the NBA. As people look at him and think, oh, maybe he took a step back last season. He didn't really. He just didn't take a huge leap forward. I think he improved, but there were concerns in terms of some of the shot selection stuff with Tatum. Does he get more of an opportunity now this season, John, to be more of a 1B sort of a player alongside Kemba, which was a little bit harder with Kyrie there last season, but can he establish himself as that at least second guy pretty comfortably?
I think he's going to be in that mix. Basically, it's Kemba and then some combination of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward. For Tatum, he's definitely going to, you mentioned the shot selection. And one thing that I've seen so far from Team USA, he hasn't finished very well, but he's been attacking, which is a positive step. I know a lot of people are probably looking at his performance and going, I'm not so sure about this. But what I've seen this past couple of seasons has been him taking a step or two inside the three-point line and launching long twos. And at least I've seen him be aggressive and attacking the rim. So if he can carry that mentality over into the NBA season, I think we'll start to see him start taking steps forward, because that threat of him attacking is going to open up the other aspects of his game, and maybe he can get back up to a better three-point percentage. He shot 43.5% his rookie year. That dropped to 37.3, which is still good, but not quite as good. If he can pump that up to 38, 39 with the addition of the driving, I think he has an opportunity to take a pretty good step forward this year.
Yeah, he was a guy that finished last year as the 67th best player, which was up from 72 as a rookie, but still only played 31 minutes a night. I actually think his minutes are going to jump up significantly from that. I think he's probably not going to get to 20 points per game, but he's going to at least push it. And I think we can see a bit of a bounce back in some of his efficiency numbers. He had a true shooting of 59 as a rookie, dropped down to under 55 last season. I think that sort of goes back around that 57, 58 mark, league average. It's just more, this is something I've talked about with Tatum quite a bit in terms of even before he came into the league, is he provides like average stats across all categories. He's an average rebounder, an average assist, an average steals, an average blocks, an average threes, and average percentages, although his free throw percentage is probably above that at this point, making him a really interesting roto player, but needs that one sort of big standout skill, and it's going to have to come in terms of points per game and being a 20-point per game guy. And I don't think he's quite there yet, but I do think that the ADP on Yahoo at 52 and the rank on ESPN at 55 and Fantrax 53, I think that's about right in that 50 to 60 sort of zone for Tatum as he takes another incremental step forward for this coming season. A guy that needs to take more than an incremental step forward from what he offered up last season is Gordon Hayward, John, who obviously struggled in his return from his ankle injury and fractured leg. Only played 26 minutes a night, had many struggles during the season, only shot 33% from three. I guess the question here is, we're almost going to be 2 years removed from Hayward's injury. He is, how old now? 29 years of age. So still not completely out of it, but was last year just hey, he's coming back, things aren't working, there's locker room issues, some of them involving the way Stevens treated Hayward and all that sort of stuff that's sort of come out recently. Are we seeing Hayward push more back into that 30-minute a night range? Is he going to be in there as a starter because Marcus Morris is gone now? Like, what are we looking at as a role for Hayward this season?
Well, whatever role it's going to be, whether it's a starter or whether they keep him coming off the bench, I definitely think that they can get him back up to about 30 minutes a night, which he was in that mid-30s back in Utah. Played 25 minutes a game this past season. The thing to remember about last season is he had a second surgery in May. And so he spent the entire summer last year rehabbing again from a second surgery that removed the plates and the screws and all of that stuff. So he didn't play 5-on-5 basketball until the end of September. And so he was way behind physically, mentally, all of that going into last season. And then we know what happened last season. This season, I talked to him already, and he says that he's been working out daily. He stayed in Boston. He didn't go back to his San Diego home. He stayed in Boston. He stayed at that practice facility. He worked with the coaches. He worked with the trainers. He's doing all of his stuff. He says his confidence is back. He says he's able to do all of the things that he was trying to do last year without restrictions. Like last year when he was trying to rehab, he could do things for 10 minutes. This year he's doing it without restrictions. So I don't know what that's going to mean because you still have to apply all of that to NBA play. But he doesn't have Kyrie anymore. He doesn't have Terry Rozier. He doesn't have that atmosphere around. Kemba's going to be a different influence. I think this is going to be a better atmosphere for him. And like I said, he's spending the entire summer working out and preparing like he always had prior to the injury. So if he's gonna come back, this is going to be the season. If he doesn't rebound and have at least a good season, maybe not all-star season, but maybe a 17-point, 5 rebound, 3 assists per game type of season. Like if he can't do that, then he never will, because this is the year, the situation, everything is kind of shaping up perfectly for him right now.
I think we forget how good Gordon Hayward was, especially from a fantasy point of view. He had 4 consecutive top 50 seasons, and the last 3 of those were top 40 seasons before moving to Boston and breaking his leg last year outside the top 120. I think he's a big bounce back candidate for this season. I think he pushes past those 30 minutes a night. I think we see a little bit more of the playmaking from him that we saw in Utah. Now, I don't think he's going to be Utah Gordon Hayward. I don't think anybody does, but a rank on ESPN of 110, there's tremendous value in that. Even Yahoo at 84, Fantrax at 85, I think he can beat those numbers. I think he can push into the top 70 and maybe even get into the top 60. I think he's a big bounce back guy. And of all those reasons you said, I'm not that worried about him being totally gone and, oh my God, is his career over, or any of that sort of stuff. I think that he can get back to at least maybe a 90%, 85% of what he was before, not that shell of a player that we saw last season. So I am expecting pretty big things from Hayward this season. I think he's a nice later round sort of a guy with some significant upside to come in, given those problems that he dealt with last season. Do you think that Marcus Smart will be the starter this season as he was last year?
I don't know. That's the big question here for the Celtics. What's the starting lineup going to be? Obviously Kemba, Tatum, and then whichever center, Cantor, Poirier, whomever. But then it leaves 2 spots. It's going to be Brown, Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart. Those 3 guys are going to be vying for it. I don't know if it's going to be a situational thing. My guess is that Marcus Smart comes off the bench. He might be in closing lineups, but I think he comes off the bench because he is really their only backup point guard now. Yeah. With Kemba there. It's going to be Kemba and Smart, and then behind them, maybe Brad Wanamaker is going to get his opportunity, or one of the rookies is going to make a leap, and maybe Carson Edwards steps up. But my guess is going to be that Marcus Smart comes off the bench because he's a very underrated point guard, and this is going to be his opportunity. Passer. Yeah, he's an extraordinary passer. I think he runs an offense very, very well.
Agreed.
So you're talking from a fantasy perspective, this is his first chance to really be a backup point guard, which means now he's going to get an opportunity to get a few more assists than he has in the past. I mean, the most assists that he had was the 4.8 a couple years ago. He might be able to get more than that just because of not only backing up Kemba Walker, but allowing the Celtics to play them both together, and you put Kemba off the ball because he's obviously a natural scorer. So that might be an opportunity for Marcus Smart to pump up his assists and get his 30-plus minutes a night.
Marcus Smart is continually underrated in fantasy. He was the 89th ranked player last season. He's currently coming in at 170 on ESPN. I've got absolutely no idea why. They're 106th on Fantrax. I think he's a top 100 player again. I don't care if he starts. I don't care if he comes off the bench. I agree with you. The assists will probably rise from Smart. He gets steals. He's a strong enough rebounder. He hits threes. And last season, he shot 42% from the field, 81 from the line, and 36% from three, which is 57 true shooting, which is, we talk about how bad of a shooter he is. That's actually really good as a shooter. Now, it's a significant leap up from anywhere he's been in his career before, considering he'd never had a true shooting of 50% prior. But that is a big leap forward, and we've seen the incremental increases in his three-point shooting and his free throw shooting, and it's starting to come out where it's not like when Marcus Smart hoists up a shot, you're just like holding your head in your hands going, oh my God, what is he doing? There's at least a level of confidence in it now.
Yeah, I think Marcus Smart has worked very hard on his shooting, and he I did a whole story on working with the assistant coach Jay Larinaga, and he had a hand injury a couple seasons ago where it really set him back, and he still shot over 30% from three, but the hand injury, which was very serious and almost a career ending injury, that
which one was that? The one where we punched the photo frame?
Yes, and he almost lost the finger out of that. So he went into this past season healthy, a little bit more confident, a little bit more selective. I think all of those have combined. We know the history with Marcus Smart shooting, but the confidence is there. And when he's running an offense, as opposed to playing off the ball, he is much more likely to make a pass. The crazy threes that he's taken are very often catch and shoot 3-pointers or end of shot clock, end of game clock threes, which most guys wait till the buzzer goes off and they throw up a token shot to make it look like they tried. He actually just shoots those. So I think the selection is better. And in this role, he may not be taking quite as many. His actually 3-point attempts dropped last season from the year prior. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped again to 4 or below, just because he's going to be looking to facilitate more.
Yeah, that's definitely a big possibility with Smart, to see whether that does drop down. Let's talk Jaylen Brown, the guy who is likely then to take that spot in the starting lineup. Brown had a pretty disappointing season last year in terms of minutes. They were well down, only 26 minutes a night. He has never been a good fantasy player. His game isn't very well suited to fantasy. Low assist numbers, poor free throw shooting, which looks like it's never going to improve at this point. Not a high volume 3-point guy, but I do expect him to at least push into the top 150 and top 130 this season. I think his minutes are going to jump up pretty significantly from where they were last year. Do you agree with that?
I think so. The one thing, his numbers and all that stuff, like you said, were disappointing in some ways, but last season he was probably the guy that handled all of the turmoil the best. Mm-hmm. And I think, the one thing that I've seen from him on Team USA is they're using him a lot as an actual power forward. So you're talking from a fantasy perspective, that's a guy that they could probably slot into multiple positions, and power forward might be one of them. And using him to set picks and roll or pop, it just adds another element to his game. I think this experience with the national team could add a wrinkle to his game that he hasn't had before. And considering the situation, if they do decide to start Kemba, Tatum, Hayward, and Brown together, one of those guys is going to have to play the power forward. And if it's going to be Jaylen Brown, then he puts himself in a position to really be able to take slower power forwards off the dribble and attack and score. So he'll have an opportunity to put up some points at least.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to put up some interesting scoring numbers. Maybe those rebound numbers increase if he plays more closer to the basket. He's never going to be an excellent fantasy guy just because of deficiencies in other areas. But I do think he can at least be in the discussion for Standard League with one of your later round picks. But people do tend to get overhyped with Jaylen Brown in fantasy in particular. The starting center, I'm assuming at this point it's going to be Enes Kanter. He's an interesting replacement for Al Horford in that, in terms of how the other shots get distributed amongst the other players, he's a higher usage guy than what Horford is. He's an excellent offensive player. We know his defensive issues. But in terms of like a minutes role for Kanter, he's not going to be playing Al Horford's minute load, is he?
No. The Celtics are in a unique spot with their center position because they have, if they could somehow merge all of their centers together, they'd have a great one. They have a bunch of guys that do a particular thing well, and then they have this kind of wild card in Vincent Poirier, who we don't know what he's going to be, how many minutes he's going to get. Kanter, obviously, we know the offense and the defensive deficiencies, so that means other centers are going to have to come in and play certain minutes. So I don't know that Kanter is going to get more, like he's not going to go above his career average. I think 22 minutes a game is probably right about where he should be, considering they'll need Daniel Tice because he stretches the floor. And if Poirier is going to be a rim runner and a guy that can go up and catch alley-oops and be an athletic big, then he's going to get his minutes against some favorable matchups. So Cantor will be Enes Kanter. Like, I don't think there's going to be anything special about him this year with the Celtics.
I have him playing more minutes than that, but obviously not up to 30, like around that 24-25 mark for Kanter, which puts him at a back end of fantasy value. He's not going to have that same value that he had with the Knicks last season because there's obviously more players in this team who are going to take shots. And as you mentioned, there are other centers there. Now, something that I've done a lot of shows about breakout guys, and the player that people always come at me for not mentioning is the rock DJ, Robbie Williams. Now, people go, oh, no, he's definitely going to have a breakout. He's going to start games. He blocks shots. I think that there's a real chance he's the fourth center on this team still this season.
I agree. In fact, I've been advocating for him to spend the season in the G League and get 35 minutes a game playing and learning the techniques that he's supposed to be learning. Watching him in Summer League, looking at what he's trying to work on, he needs reps. And last year, I know because I've spoken to the people on the Celtics and Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge, and the plan all along last year was to keep Robert Williams in the G League. But they had injuries to Horford, who spent a lot of time out with a knee soreness, a tendonitis. Aaron Baines kept getting these injuries, broke his hand. He just kept getting these hurt over and over again. Daniel Tice was out with a plantar fascia issue. And so they needed Robert Williams in case the remaining centers, they had two remaining centers, whatever, that were healthy. If one of them went down or one of them fouled out, they needed that emergency. So he spent all last year on the bench, kind of being that break glass in case of emergency guy, and he didn't get the reps that he was supposed to get. So he's a year behind, in my opinion, in his development. I'm looking at this year as his sort of second rookie season where he knows everything that they need him to do. He knows how they want him to play defense. He's got to be in certain positions. He's got to be better about certain techniques, and getting him the reps in the G League to learn over and over and over again how to do that stuff, that is paramount, because then next season he can come in and do the things that people are looking at him to maybe do this season. So I love Robert Williams, and he has some highlight plays, but I think if you watched him closely last year, you know that he needs a lot of work, and the best thing to do is get him those 35 minutes a game, and he's not going to get that at the NBA level.
I think people looked at that 7-game stretch in December where he blocked 3 shots, 2, 5-1, 5-2-1, where he was forced into that role and go, well, he's going to jump up, he's going to be their best center. And I'm glad that you agree with me, so I didn't look like an idiot saying that I think he's going to be their fourth-string center. I looked at it and go, well, Kanter's there, Tice is really good, and they didn't bring Vincent Poirier over just to shine people's shoes. Like, he's there for a specific reason. And Williams can come in, maybe we're both wrong, and maybe he does come in and takes the backup job and blocks 3 shots a night in 20 minutes. I really don't think that's going to happen. And I agree with you, he needs more G League time, and those other 3 guys are really useful players and are going to fill that role. Do you think that we're going to have Tice or Poirier get the most majority of those backup minutes?
I got to tell you, that's an excellent question, and I don't know. I think it might depend on what they need, because Tice is at least a 3-point threat. Not the greatest 3-point shooter out there, but in limited attempts, he did shoot 38%. Now, he shot 31% the year before. But point is, he can hit the 3. He's not Horford, but he can hit the 3. And so if you're playing, say, Utah, unless Enes Kanter, who has posted his workout videos hitting threes, but then again, Andre Drummond has videos of him hitting threes.
Steven Adams was doing it last year too.
Right. So, I mean, unless Kanter can actually do that and become a threat from 3, I wouldn't be surprised if when they play these big shot blocking, rim protecting centers, that they get a heavier dose of Daniel Tice, because he's the one guy that can stretch the floor despite other deficiencies. Poirier, from what I've seen, isn't going to be a 3-point threat. He doesn't pop out that far. He doesn't have that kind of range. So he's going to be the guy that can take advantage of difficult, deficient pick and roll defense and really attack, along with Kanter. So you can have that as your 1-2 punch. So the backup center minutes might just be situational.
Yeah, I can see that being the case as well. I think Tice is a better fantasy option than Poirier, but he is a name to watch who's a decent enough scorer and rebounder. Poirier, if he's forced into a larger role, that they are names to watch. Now, a couple of interesting rotations. So, this is a weird team in terms of the rotation. I think there's a real chance that we have two rookies in the rotation from very early on in the season. There's no real backup power forward on this team. Maybe they put Semi Ojeleye into there, but Grant Williams showed an ability to play cohesive winning basketball in summer league as he did throughout his career at Tennessee. And Carson Edwards also has that chance to jump into one of those backup guard spots, as you mentioned, if they're going to run Marcus Smart at the backup point guard role. They need someone else there to play alongside him. So I think Carson Edwards and Grant Williams could be in the rotation very early on. How do you see those two guys?
I think those would be the two prime candidates. I love Grant Williams because he's willing to do all of the little things.
Yep.
And he's not going to be like looking to score like he did at Tennessee. He's going to be, and we saw it in summer league. He's going to set the picks. He's going to rebound. He'll shoot when he needs to shoot, but he's out there to do all of the other things. So he's like the ultimate kind of glue guy on the court. In my fantasy world, he becomes the starting four, and that allows a combination of Smart and one of those other wings, Hayward or Tatum or Brown, to come off the bench. Hayward or Brown, really. That's a fantasy. But maybe, possibly, if he can find his way, because he doesn't need to be a guy out there getting all of those shots. And when you look at that lineup of Kemba, Tatum, Brown, Hayward, Cantor, all of those guys want to score. All of them want shots. So I think taking one of those guys off and putting in a guy that doesn't need any of that stuff, that helps everybody else, because now all the other four guys can get their shots, and Grant can go in there, and his biggest thing will probably be getting in there, boxing out, getting rebounds, maybe getting a block or two, maybe getting an assist or two. He was a pretty good passer. So I like Grant, and I don't want to get overhyped on him because it may not translate from what we saw, but I think he's got a very good chance to get some good minutes. And I think Carson can be a guy that he's not afraid to shoot. He'll come in and fill it up. He seems fearless, and he could be one of those guys that, especially if the guys are one of those nights where the guys don't have it, you can tell a team is flat, and you say, all right, fine. We'll put Carson Edwards in there because he's not going to be flat. He's fire right away. And maybe he becomes a guy that occasionally comes in and hits 4 or 5 shots. But he'll have an opportunity to come in, especially if Brad Wanamaker isn't panning out like they hoped he would.
Yeah, I can see both of those guys. And I agree with you with Williams. I think he's going to be, if not this season, he's going to be a starting power forward in the league pretty soon. I've liked him from a fantasy point of view, talked about him in dynasty rankings, significantly higher than what his draft spot was. I think that he's got a real chance to be at least a deeper league guy for this season, and then pushing forward in the next couple of years to move into a starter's role. I think Edwards will struggle a little bit with his efficiency this season, but he was fantastic in summer league. He can provide that pop off the bench, and there is a spot there for a guard. It's either going to be him or Wanamaker. And at this point, I'm putting my money on Edwards getting the bulk of those minutes as the season does go on. Just for all the Celtics fans listening to this, we need a Semi Ojeleye update.
Well, the Semi Ojeleye update is he's still got a lot of muscles.
Okay.
And he's out there, he's working, he'll have the opportunity to take that maybe backup forward, power forward, or even, I keep talking about Grant Williams. Semi Ojeleye is in the same boat if he can do a lot of those things, but they really need him to be a lot more efficient from three. He just hasn't been able to find his range, and that's the one thing they need him to do. This might be the make or break year for Semi Ojeleye. So he'll have an opportunity. They love him. They do love him. This Celtics staff wants him out there because he's just so willing to do whatever it takes. And obviously he's a beast and he's very athletic, but if he can't come in and shoot 35, 36% from three, and we haven't seen that happen yet, then there's a good chance that he falls way down in the pecking order.
Ojale also one of the worst fantasy players that do exist. He just doesn't put up numbers really in any category, and he's not going to be troubling too many people. I do think he'll be a rotation guy, but he's just not going to be an impact guy. And if he even made the top 400 this season, I'd be pretty surprised from his overall fantasy input or output. Maybe that's the right word. Let's have a look at some value and bust guys for this team. I think Marcus Smart on ESPN at 170 is ridiculously low. There's a lot of value there. I also like Gordon Hayward, as I mentioned, and I think Kemba Walker coming in at number 15 on Fantrax is just a little bit too high. Same on Yahoo, where he's at 16. I just don't see him being that level of value coming to a team with way more offensive options than what he was used to in Charlotte. John, thank you for coming on the show again and talking about the Celtics team. It's a very different team. It's going to be interesting for you guys over the course of the season, so let everyone know where they can find your work and on Twitter.
You can find my work. I cover the Celtics. I'm a beat writer for MassLive.com, so go to MassLive.com/Celtics for all of your Celtics coverage, and you can find me on Twitter at RedsArmy_John.
So go over there and follow John, check out Locked On Celtics, and read his work at Mass Live. John, thanks for coming on.
You got it, my man.
And that'll do it for today's show. Make sure you're subscribing to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and on YouTube. Hit the subscribe, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. You know the drill. Follow me on Twitter at RedRock_Bball and Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Enes Kanter.